Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Hitting with Holly, our podcast here on the ManOn2nd Baseball YouTube channel. And it's a thrill to have Todd Hollandsworth here as we're building this channel. We're building the podcast wing of it. So kind of bear with us. This is only our second one. We're going to work through some technical kinks and such, but it's just great to have my buddy Todd Hollandsworth on yet again. Holly, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Joe. So always good to be with you, and very, very excited. We're going to get to talk some hitting today, some things going on at the major league level, and obviously things that I'm seeing at the youth level, things that we're seeing in college ball right now. Listen, the game itself right now is in transition, and I think it's a great time for you and I to dive in. As there's lots of conversation about style, about where this game is going, where hitting's going. In what the big leagues are looking for, what's college looking for. And I think there's a lot of conversation to be had about these younger ball players who are probably in some ways a little curious as to, who do we watch? Do we watch the kids in college? They're doing it a little bit different. Do we watch the guys in the big leagues? I want to be a big leaguer. Do I need to do it the big league way, or do I do it, a different way? So a lot of fun conversation.
No doubt, no doubt. And that's kind of the beauty of this platform. We're going to attack it from all angles. Todd Hollandsworth, of course, National League Rookie of the Year in 1996, World Series champion with the Florida Marlins in 2003, 12-year MLB veteran, has a lot to offer. Holly, let's start off on, as you noted, it's a sport of transition. And I find it very interesting that we're at a time where you could be a two-time batting champion. You could get 200 hits. You might hit 2,500 to 3,000 hits in your career, and you got a segment of the baseball community, a loud segment, and it's an influential segment, meaning the analytics. They're telling us that Luis Arraez is not the player we think he is. Batting average isn't as important as you think it is, and neither are singles. So, just kind of your opinion on that and that kind of player, because Luis Arraez, by all accounts, is if you're on the scouting grade, an 80 hitter, which is what all teams are looking for, hitters, but yet he's not hitting the right way, apparently.
Well, he's definitely hitting the right way, Joe. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. Guys like this get traded for. Guys like this have a place in the starting lineup every day. I think what we're seeing a little bit of is the infatuation with the long ball, the love affair that we have with the long ball, the love affair we have with guys getting on, but the consistency of the game itself. And I think that's what, even a lot of our younger kids are struggling with understanding as they kind of move into their teens and maybe even get to the opportunity of playing, baseball in college. You break it down backwards. They say it all the time. There's no 300 hitters riding the pine. They don't. They play every day because they're reliable, they're predictable, and so much of this sport, so much of hitting is very unpredictable. The one thing that I watched, which the argument from the other side, which really truly never gets thrown out, it just gets moved past, and it's unfortunate, are the number of guys who have kind of geared their game to the slug, had the slug early in their career, then after 2 or 3 years have just disappeared off the face of the earth because they didn't have any other part of the game. And when the long ball left them, they got left behind. And that's unfortunate. But the one thing that I do know is if you know how to hit, you know how to field, you know how to run, you're an athlete, you do different things on the field. Those guys always have a place. They always have a place on the field. And that's one thing that they tend to kind of dismiss. I get it. Listen, a home run is much more valuable than a single, but there's only one Aaron Judge. There's only one Bryce Harper. There's only one Pete Alonso. I mean, guys who have these abilities to change games with one swing of the bat. And I understand the gearing of the game towards that. But what about everybody else? What about the 99% of baseball players who don't have that ability? So to constantly preach that is very damaging, in my personal opinion. And it's causing a lot of kids a lot of grief because they're not really truly learning how to hit before they start searching for the long ball all the time because they think it's the only answer.
Yeah, we kind of touched on this in our last podcast, and we encourage people to go back and it's on the site to see the introductory Hitting with Holly podcast. And we noted this, the players that, have one good year. And I'm talking high school players, really good high school players who feel they have to be a different player the following year and they change things. But I don't really want to go down that lane entirely again. But I did want to kind of talk about, and you just touched on it, where a player may feel the sport is weeding that player out. Like, Dave D'Agostino, when we do our ManOn2nd podcast on Real Voice of the Game, which you've been our guest many times, Dave noted that the starting pitcher is almost going the way of the running back in the NFL. I can almost make the same argument that kind of table setter, traditional 300 on base 350 type guy who's not going to slug a lot, but is going to get on base a good bit for you. That player, and those are usually either your top of the lineup or your 8th, 9th hitters. That player is kind of finding himself maybe being on the extinct list if this mindset doesn't change.
Well, and even to that point that you made, where we get the sense that the starting pitcher in a lot of ways is being minimized. Asking a guy to go out and give you 200 innings is just rare now, even at the major league level. And of course, that's where you and I both gravitate towards, because that's where the majority of our experiences have been. But the reality of understanding even how that works, I think back to the Rays when they were kind of working through, about a decade ago or so ago, when they were starting to kind of use this new formula of using, the bullpen game. We always dreaded the bullpen game when I was coming up. Of course, we were facing starters more traditionally. But the idea of the bullpen game is 3 or 4 guys taking the bulk of the innings. And, one guy might go 3, one guy might go 1, but somehow it all adds up to 9. And you might see 4 or 5 guys pitch that day. But in that sequencing, I would ask this question. I would ask this question to dads. I would ask this question to coaches. I would ask this question to even the big leaguers. What's the hardest thing to do in that game is to get a feel for what's actually going on. We talked about it throughout games. When you face a starter 3 times, you learn a lot from your first at bat to your third at bat. And by the time you get to your third at bat, you feel like, hey, listen, I got a pretty good feel of what's going on and I can handle this. But at the same time, that dynamic has now been kind of taken out of the sport. Not all of it. I mean, we're not talking, Garrett Cole hasn't disappeared, but those guys are starting to kind of feel like they're kind of falling by the wayside, and we want to use the bullpens more. And with that mentality, what is actually easier for the hitter to do? Yeah, that's a complex understanding. You may go into a game, get 4 at bats against 4 different pitchers, but the approach is really what I'm getting at. Is it harder to have that drop and drive approach, or I'm just swinging for the fences and hope one goes out mentality? Or am I more likely to find more success staying through the middle of the field, knowing how to keep my bat flat through the strike zone and put the bat on ball more often in that type of dynamic? And I would argue that I feel like it's easier to be an Arraez than it is to be someone like Aaron Judge in our game. And I think for players, remember, Aaron Judge is incredibly gifted. 1 in a million, 1 in a decade, kind of like Bryce Harper. That's the way I used to always see these guys. I mean, these guys are game changers, and they're game changers for a reason. But if you're if you're training and teaching the rest of everybody else, how are they supposed to succeed when they realize I'm not Bryce Harper, or I'm not Aaron Judge? I don't have his physicality. I don't have the ability to hit mistakes off my bat and still watch it go over the fence. I'm hoping that my mistake off the bat gets over the shortstop's head. You know what I'm saying? So if we're looking for success and we're looking for consistent success, especially in our younger players, let's make this a little easier on them instead of making it so hard to live up to these incredible expectations, while even at the major league level, we're waiting around for the next 30, 40, 50 home run guy. Those guys, there's 3 of them a year. Where does everybody else fall? So that's really what your question has to be, and what you ask yourself on the inside, even as a player coming up. It's a mistake that I made early in my career. I was a slasher. That's who I was. I was a lot like Johnny Damon coming up. And Johnny wasn't the prettiest swing, but man, he knew how to get on base. He knew how to slash. He knew how to go down the left field line. He knew how to go down the right field line. He had a way, and he was very comfortable with his way. I kind of had that way, and then I tried to do the long ball thing, and it didn't work out for me at all. as I was trying to get, because all of my power really was to right center, but I had completely abandoned one side of the field. But then I watched the rest of my game sink. I wasn't able to steal bases. I wasn't able to be active. I wasn't putting the ball in play enough. And I had to make a early career adjustment back to the guy that I kind of got there at, being that slasher.
Yeah. And those are good points, because it sounds, Holly, like you're always in your head trying to be what you thought they wanted, or maybe they flat out told you what they wanted. And you start seeing, these players, especially the younger players, where high school at a high level and maybe a college opportunity might be the end for them in terms of where their career takes them. But I believe you just still have to be who you are. You have to, we kind of touched on this the first podcast, is once you identify what kind of player you are, it doesn't mean you can't hit the occasional home, or maybe you tap in an event and then you progress into that power guy. Maybe that just kind of comes just because your mechanics are so good and your twitch is good and you got bat speed and you got all sorts of stuff that works for you, that your swing can take you to a place that you didn't think you were able to go to a few years earlier.
Speaking, brother, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, hitting is a progression. Aaron Judge would be the first person to tell you he didn't know early in life that this is the man that he was ultimately going to be and the impact player that he has become at the major league level, Shohei Ohtani. You're working towards this, and you're working towards understanding how to put bat on ball more consistently, making adjustments in your swing. I mean, we see it more and more in the game today. I mean, there probably isn't a day in my house where I don't talk to my two college players about how guys keep their feet down a lot more, because they're dealing with extreme velocity, right? You're dealing with 95 to 97 pretty consistently, even in Division I college, and you see it, and it's like, okay, well, if my leg kick's not on time and I'm struggling to get my foot down on time, I need to make an adjustment, because I need to put bat to ball more consistently. Strikeouts are not okay. There's not a day on this green earth you're going to get me to ever say that strikeouts are okay, because they really aren't. Because you lose your piece as a player when you strike out. I mean, go watch the College World Series, or all the playoff games that they got going on right now. Watch these kids who, come back from a big spot in the ball game and they have a big strikeout, and we're like, oh, don't worry about it. You didn't ground into a double play. But look at the beleaguered look on their face as they're walking back to the dugout. They didn't come through in the situation. They probably were swinging a little bit too big, and nothing happened. Nothing was a result. That's the thing. We focus on, okay, well, you didn't ground into the double play, instead of saying, okay, well, what could I have done better in that situation? I mean, you don't just have to hit it over the fence. Yeah, we're always looking for a base hit, but there's a sac fly with the bases loaded that gets the job done. There's just a variety of other answers. And all of that kind of goes back to hitting basics, understanding that putting bat on ball matters.
Holly, great points. And I want you take us through as a former player. Okay, let's say you are that team offensively and defensively, because you're on both sides of the ball as well as high quality outfitter that you were. Okay, guys on third, there's one out. And that pitcher gets the strikeout right there. What does that do to the man on deck now, who knows hit or nothing, there's no run? And defensively, your confidence knowing now your infielders are moved back, the outfielders can relax a little bit, not have to worry about making a throw on a tag up or anything like that. What does that take us to both sides? What that does when you say the strikeout doesn't matter, for those who say strikeout that doesn't matter, for the psyche of players, first the offensive mindset, when you don't get the first guy doesn't get the runner home, and now it's on the next guy, and then the flip side, the defense.
Well, on both sides, really, it's the same answer. It's the escalation of emotional response, and that's truly what goes on. If you're in a 1-1 ball game in the seventh inning and you've got the bases loaded and one out, all of a sudden it certainly feels like this game is now going to be decided in this one at bat. Now, this one at bat a little bit earlier in the game, certainly still filled with emotion, but maybe doesn't have nearly the significance that it does, because you feel like there's still more innings to play, and there are. But if you're in the seventh inning of that ball game in that at bat, if a slow ground ball to the right side scores the run, you're saying, okay, well, that kid did his job. They've got the lead back. Now we're only playing with 3 outs. So that's how you look at it on the defensive side of it. Let's just say you get the strikeout. Every guy on the field's breathing a sigh of relief. Now you're a pop-up, a fly ball, just an out away from getting out of the inning unscathed. And now you feel like all the momentum's back on your side. That's where momentum swings an awful lot in the games of baseball, and understanding it as a hitter. The on-deck hitter, now all of a sudden, who is in a, comfortable spot, he's thinking the guy in front of him is going to come through, feels the pressure of what the situation has just now changed into. The lead has not been gained. The strikeout has been recorded. Now there's 2 outs. You're stepping into the box feeling like, okay, now the only way this works for us is if I come through with a base hit. That's all the pressure.
No pressure, right? No pressure.
Every time you step up into the box, you say to yourself, I got it. We used to talk about this all the time. There's like one thing you never want to say to yourself as a hitter, and it's I gotta. And when you go in there with the I gotta, like get a hit, so to speak,
yeah,
you're starting to set yourself up for failure, because the game itself is centered around it anyway. The idea is production. And the word production is where I think that a lot of us have gotten a little skewed here and a little off track. There are so many productive outs in a game of baseball, both offensively and defensively. We were watching a game last night. There were a couple of great defensive plays that changed the outcome of the game, plays that were made with runners on base. The hitter did everything right. The defense made these spectacular plays, which set the course for the momentum, which set the course for the outcome. And the team that was actually on defense at the time ended up winning the ball game. Consider them missed opportunities. But it's no fault of the hitter. The hitter actually put together 2 quality at-bats in both situations. They hit the ball hard. One was a one-hopper at the third baseman. The guy laid out, made a spectacular play. Another was just a line drive to an outfielder. That's the game of baseball. That is going to happen. But that's not a failure in what I'm responsible for as a hitter. That's you doing your job and the game just doing its thing. Because here's the thing, it's not a guarantee. Baseball and hitting it's not like shooting free throws, where if you do everything mechanically correct, it's supposed to go in every time. It just doesn't work like that. You can do things correctly in the game of baseball. You can barrel up and still run into a lot of outs. It's just the way the game goes. But what we do know is that the more you barrel up the ball, the more likely you are to get hits. And there's a big difference between the two. So understanding that there is so much emotion in that dynamic that you just kind of presented us with. And it really does swing in both directions. But that's what this game truly is all about. How do we control our emotions on both sides of the baseball?
Yeah, that is probably my one pet peeve. And I kind of look, I guess that's to me like the third down conversion stat. It's almost like, it's that kind of dynamic. I pay a lot of attention to that. Are you getting that runner home? Because I used to think, when I'm watching you play and that 03 team play, and I'm like, okay, you have an inning where, like you noted, bases. Let's take a bases loaded, no outs. Like you at least should get 2 runs, because if you get 2 balls in play, you can get a run on that first guy comes in on a sac fly and everyone moves up a bag. I always look at a big inning. If you got a guy on third with less than 2 outs, there's another run, right? That now it's like, okay, this 3-run inning should be a 4-run inning. This 4-run inning could be a 5-run inning. Again, there's no guarantee, but it's kind of how the dominoes should fall. If people are doing their job, you could, the more times you have a guy in third with that nobody out, and you got 3 runs across, there's a good chance you get that 4th run and maybe that 5th run. So it's an aspect of the game I hope is worked on a lot. And what's your perception when you see coaching? Like, is that yes, everyone does their situational hitting drills, but do they really emphasize what I'm really trying to drive home?
No, I mean, I do see a lot. I mean, on the whole, I would say absolutely not. And it's honestly why you and I are sitting here putting together a podcast, because we watch an awful lot of it, certainly at the youth level. The hitters today have become very isolated. They have hitting coaches, they have hitting techniques, all these things that they're teaching themselves. All of it revolves around the individual itself, not the team concept. I use my team. I'm sure just about any World Series championship caliber team would tell you. And I speak of it. I speak on it all the time. I mean, that truly was the greatest gift that we had. As a group, we became the most selfless group that we'd ever been. And we're talking guys who are Hall of Famers, guys who have gone on and had really, really nice careers, guys who have gone to all-star games, guys who have done a lot of things. We needed different heroes in different days, and we embraced that mentality. And that mentality is a team working as one, not one working as part of a team. And there's a difference between the two. And it's like, you got to buy into the idea. And when you buy into that idea, production happens. And here's the thing, the weight of responsibility, that dynamic that you just presented us with, right? The bases loaded and one out. Guy doesn't come through, beating himself up in the head as he's walking back to the dugout. He's feeling like he's failed everybody. That's where the guy behind him says, you know what? All right, I got to come through in this situation. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to hit the ball hard. I'm going to see what happens. But, I'm going to go up there with the right attitude, and I'm going to pick my teammate up. Every year I watch college baseball. This time of year, you start to watch the playoffs. Yeah, I'm so intrigued because we get to the end of the line and you watch these offenses, the ones that are the most fluid, they're the ones that are always left standing at the very end. And it's a dynamic of not just guys who pound the baseball. Yeah, the middle of the lineup has guys with 17, 18, 22 home runs. I get it. Most of the teams have that. But no team has that all up and down their lineup. It doesn't work like that. And it's like again, using, Aaron as an example, Aaron Judge. Aaron is one person. You may load the bases. He may have made the last out in the inning, and the 4, 5, and 6 guy end up getting on base. And it's your 7, 8, and 9 guy who are coming up with the bases loaded. You see my point? It's like, Aaron's still 3 hitters away. So we continue to buy into these individual offensive philosophies that don't necessarily benefit the players who are buying into them. And at the same time, you're not really developing any kind of team concept as far as where your team's going to go. And a lot of that, I'm going to see it next weekend. You're going to see it in a lot of other places. Every now and again, you run into it. And what I'm talking about is youth baseball. Travel ball really just kind of promotes the individual. And there's not that team concept because these teams don't practice together. They just play together. And that's really what it's become. And these kids are now carrying this to the next level. It's why scouts ask, even, college scouts, what are your numbers? What's your speed? What's your velocity from the outfield? How hard do you throw the baseball? You're not looking the eye exam that you talk about in the great scouts of the game who can just see baseball DNA built into certain individuals who probably don't necessarily have the maybe the greatest ability as some other guys on the field. But when you see a kid or you see a guy who's got baseball, that baseball understanding, we call it that sixth sense in the sport, it stands out. And it's a kid who understands the game situations, knows what each situation demands, knows when to run the bases, knows when to take a bag, knows when to back down, let a guy hit, knows what to do defensively, is kind of just in front of all of this conversation. Success always seems to kind of follow those guys around.
Yeah. And that's a perfect segue. And you led me right there to our next segment, which we do want to talk about travel ball, and you being a dad of Trey, your son, who's playing travel ball. I believe you said you're going to be up in Alabama soon.
Yes. Next weekend. That's right.
Yeah. So let's talk about just what you look for out of your son from summer ball, from travel ball, what you hope he gets out of it, how you want him to approach it. Is it a fun experience? Does he feel extra pressure? Because obviously high school ball, there's a lot of pressure. There's always pressure when you put the uniform on, don't get me wrong, but where you kind of want them to just go be you, let people see you, and go play against the best competition you can. How do you approach travel ball?
Well, I really do approach it as best I can, certainly through my sons. And I've taught it to all 3 of my sons, but my youngest son, who's going through it right now, I want him to be the best that he can be. I want him to be a man of integrity. I want him to play the game with love. I want him to love his teammates. And that might be the key and to hit a lot of his success. Yeah, he wants to go out. Yes, I throw him batting practice just about every day. Yes, we're constantly working on things to get better at. But at the same time, he needs to understand that, when you're playing on all these teams, all these different teams, your high school team, your travel team, all this stuff changes all the time. You're going to have different teammates. And it's very easy to become very disconnected. But the one thing that I will instill in my kids, and all 3 of my sons thankfully have it, is not only their love for the game, but their love for their teammates and love for the winning process. Winning is a process. It's not a light, isolated event. It is something that, continues to move forward. It's something that you build. It's something that you build into. And I want my sons to radiate that. I want my sons to give that off. I want them to be positive people in the dugout when the kid strikes out in that situation, to pat him up on the butt and to walk into his next at bat, try to come through. But even if he doesn't come through, understanding that, listen, man, we're all pulling in the same direction. baseball is a very complicated sport that way. It does scream isolation an awful lot, but it's understanding that, a real team has to work together in order to win baseball games. And that to me is so vital in my son. So what do I see? Yeah, I mean, I see an awful lot of it. A lot of these kids are coming in from different places. They feel like, they're showcasing. They're trying to show their talent. You'll hear kids talk. They'll go to a tournament, play 6 games in a tournament, go 1 for 20, but the one is a tape measure shot, and it's like really all they're searching for. My sons, I tell them, I said, listen, we're going in, we're looking for 10 for 20. We're looking for 10 hits and 20 at bats. If we can't get that, we're going to work towards it all the way to the very end. And, my idea is we're going to have good quality at bats. And one other thing that I'll add, Joe, certainly because I was actually thinking it at the time about 15 minutes ago, and want to mention it now. It's not either or, when it comes to this mindset of, who the individuals are and searching for home runs, or, are we searching for an Arraez, a guy who knows how to handle the bat? This isn't just going up there and swinging the bat. It's also putting together at bats. If they're not pitching to you and they end up walking you, it's taking the walk when they give it to you. But it's understanding what the situation demands, understanding what you're looking to execute in those situations, and what your approach ultimately can be and should be, depending on the age you are. I tell kids all the time, if you're 14 and 15 years old, I could care less about home runs. If my son Trey's team doesn't hit 1 home run this summer, so be it. If we lead the league in hitting, that's what we're talking about. Because now we're learning. Because here's the thing. You learn how to hit. You got to learn how to walk before you run. And you got to learn how to hit before you learn how to hit home runs. That's how I was raised. That's how I've seen it. And that is certainly what I feel like benefits these kids. Because at the end of it all, Joe, we want to send our kids home with smiles on their face. We want them to love this game for what it is. We're not going to send every kid to Division I college baseball. They're not all going to get to go to the minor leagues. They're not all going to get to the big leagues. In fact, most of them won't. But you want to love this game for what it is. You've got to find the success. I don't know. There's no success. I just don't have any joy in failure. So if I'm striking out way too much, something's wrong and I need to fix it. And it just really comes down to that for me.
Yeah, it's well said, and obviously your boys are in really good hands having you as their dad. What advice do you give parents and players, that the teenage player that's going to be either going to Alabama or going to various Perfect Game or Prospect Select or whatever they might be doing, East Cobb, whatever they're doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly you want to take advantage of the exposure that you're getting. I mean, there's no doubt Perfect Game does a fantastic job of getting these kids the exposure, but get it, let it be the right exposure. Don't let it be self-promotion. Let it be, listen, man, you hit one over the fence, 420, good for you. Play the game right, show respect to the opposition. We used to just kind of talk in the dugout, like, hey, I sent a limo for that guy, talking about the guy who threw me the home run ball that I hit, just, amongst ourselves. It's never about showing up guys and the bat flips. I mean, listen, I get it. I am very much a fan of kids expressing themselves with their teammates, but it should never be directed at the opposition. I mean, you're really just setting yourself up for this to become, another level of where our emotions get the best of ourselves. But my point in that is that, you want to go about this the right way. And I know that travel ball doesn't really allow for a lot of practice, but you got to work at your trade. And this is really what it comes down to for me. I feel like as much as learned for my kids in practice as it is in their games, the games is the fun part. That's the way we always saw it. But when I was a kid growing up, boy, we had practice 5 days a week. And I know kids don't have that now, and nor is it always available for them. So you have to search it out. You're going to have to find it. You're going to have to find coaches. You're going to have to find guys who are going to be able to spend the time with you to work on your game, because that is absolutely how you understand the game. And that is, in a lot of ways, the disconnect that we have from the younger generations to what we're seeing at the big league level, is that practice time has disappeared. It's just gone. The summer hasn't turned into, hey, we're going to stay local. We're going to play, 35, 40 games locally here with other teams, because that dynamic just doesn't work the same any longer. And so practice is just not as important as it once was. And I think every big leaguer that I've ever known, whatever number we're up to now, well over, I think 12,000, 13,000, former players throughout the history of the sport, well, I'll tell you the same thing. We put hundreds, if not thousands of hours into practice, into understanding what we're looking to do so that we would do it right. I tell this story because I think it's the craziest one of all. But when I was in instructional league, this is my first year in pro ball. I just turned 18 years old. They send me to instructional league. Instructional league is something that they do after the season for, really the draft that just happened. And you'll go to Arizona or you'll go to Florida, and they'll kind of teach you, a lot of things about the game of baseball that you probably didn't know. My outfield instructor with the Los Angeles Dodgers, his name was Dick McLaughlin, and he was absolutely fantastic. I mean, we used to be out on the field at 6:00 in the morning, Joe. He would hit us 2 buckets of ball, all the outfielders, all, I don't know, 7 or 8 of us. We had to be in uniform by 6. So we're learning discipline. We're learning to be on time. We're learning to, work on our trade. We had to work on throwing 4-seamers off the wall. And what I mean by that is we would, he would put us all in our outfield positions, rocket balls into the gaps. We'd have to race over. And the whole key of the drill was to practice picking the ball up off the ground or off the wall and getting that 4-seamer into your hand, so that you're not throwing a sinker or a ball that sails over the cutoff man's head. It messes up the cut. We would work on that tirelessly. I mean, think how trivial that is. Everybody's like, I'm not interested in that. I said, well, you want to know what the ingredients are of these guys who get to the big leagues and know how to stay there? These are the things that you do. They seem silly at times, but you want to make these things life lessons that I know how to do it every time. And I throw hours of batting practice every day, and you wouldn't believe how fast a 4-seamer ends up in my hands while I throw batting practice. And really, it comes back to being taught how to do it just so quickly all the way back in instructional league.
Wow. That's a really good point, and great points, great advice. I hope our audience is picking up something, especially those who might be listening who have kids or the kids themselves that are going to go play some travel ball this summer. We were going to touch on one more topic, but I think this is a good point to kind of wrap it up. We'll have plenty of material, plenty of time to revisit these other themes we want to get to, but I think that we don't want to cramp too much down everyone's throat just in one time. Holly, just kind of tell people what you're going to be doing out in the field, because along with these podcasts, you and your boys, and there'll be times I'm going to go out there as well, we're going to be doing some video segments of Todd Hollandsworth giving video instruction. Tell the audience what to expect.
Well, I got my 2 college kids home. Ty and Tug are going to be joining us, and certainly Trey's going to be joining us at different points as well, all around his travel ball tournaments. We're going to break down some hitting techniques, just some basic stuff, guys, things that you can work on yourself. I know all of this, idea that we've got to search out all this advice. We've got to search out our coaches. We've got to go to this program so that I can get this level, and we've got to pay X number of dollars. Everybody, I'm free. That's all I'm telling you. I'm free of charge. So we're going to give you some videos as best we can. We're going to talk hitting mechanics. We're going to talk outfield. We're going to talk infield. We're going to talk running the bases. We're going to talk a lot of things. And, I'll tell you right now, Joe, you and I were kind of like, game planning this and, who we would have on. It's so interesting. It kind of got me reflecting back on my life, not only as a big league outfielder for 12 seasons and the things that I experienced and lived through, but as a broadcaster, in the broadcast booth for well over a decade, both with the Chicago Cubs and the Marlins. I learned so much about pitching. I learned so much about pitching from sitting to guys like Greg Maddux and John Smoltz in the dugout, and Ramon Martinez's, and just guys that I had all these experiences with throughout my career. I've learned an awful lot about pitching to the point where it's almost predictable, but even understanding that. So we're going to get into such good stuff, things that you can pick up on, and if you're willing to practice these things, I promise you they're going to help you. They're going to help you get better at the game of baseball. I'm going to give you some of these inside secrets that we talk about, things that you do in the on-deck circle that most kids don't know to do because they're just swinging the bat and waiting to hit, things that you can pay attention to, things that are happening in the game, ideas that you can create for yourself. I mean, these are all going to be fun conversations that we're going to have. We're going to start putting some of these videos together for all of you so that you hopefully will enjoy them. Hopefully we'll pick up some of what we're talking about. Hopefully I'll do my best to explain it. But we could do this for hours, Joe. I told you a million times, you and I could probably sit here and talk for the rest of our lives about the game of baseball. I mean, we could probably spend a month and not even get to talking about the outfield, because there's just so much in this great game of baseball to talk about and ways to get better at it.
No, that's great stuff. And just echoing what Todd is saying, one of our missions here, we have this channel, and like Holly hit on it, this is just Free advice. We are not looking for anything. We'd love for you to like and subscribe and spread the word because we want to grow this channel. That's all we're asking from our audience. We just want to grow it and reach as many people. Because with my experience on the media side, the videos we're putting together and the amazing response during the baseball season where Holly, we've shared these numbers alone. In the month of May, the ManOn2nd baseball podcast, video channel here on YouTube, we had over 700,000 views. And since this, I relaunched the site in the channel in mid-February, about 1.4, getting very close to 1.5 million views. And that's just me. And now Holly's on board. We see a really bright future, and you guys, checking in has given me and Holly the inspiration to show, hey, there is this ground swelling of grassroots that we're going to try to build. The podcasts are going to be a big part of it. The instructional videos are going to be a big part of it. Holly, a quick goodbye because we want to get out of here in a reasonable hour.
Well, I just want to challenge everybody to pay attention. Yeah, this is going to be free knowledge for all of you. I'm going to give you everything I got. I'm going to lay it out there. I'm on the baseball field just about every day down here in South Florida. So lots of free knowledge. If you guys are interested, like Joe mentioned, like, subscribe, pay attention. If you got any questions, throw them our way. We'll address just about anything and everything that we can. So great to be with you this week. We're going to be with you an awful lot more, and hopefully you guys all enjoy the channel.
Yeah, and like Holly said, I was remiss in not saying that. But yes, in the comments section, throw some questions and we'll get to that. We'll give it to Holly in advance and we'll dissect it. But we're here for you guys. So we know that the market's there. We know the fan base is there or the support's there and the interest is there. And we're going to tackle it all. But with that, that's going to wrap up Hitting with Holly, episode number 2. We're going to grow this and we'll be back probably later in the week. But if not, we're going to be back really soon either way. With that, thank you, everyone. And like, subscribe, and catch you in the next one.